بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله أما بعد فإن أصدق الحديث كتاب الله وخير الهدى هدى محمد صلى الله عليه وآله وسلم وشر الأمور محدثاتها وكل محدثة بدعة وكل بدعة ضلالة وكل ضلالة في النار رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي. After praising Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and sending immense greetings and salutations upon the final Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam. The topic of discussion today, bi'ithnillahi ta'ala, is ahmiyatu sunnah, the importance of the sunnah and the role and the impact of the sunnah on our daily lives. And all of us should be familiar that awwalan, the importance of the sunnah is from amongst the second most important aspects of the Islamic law or legislation, the Sharia of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Indeed, the Sunnah is what begins to explain the legislation, the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And thus many ulama have mentioned that the Quran has more need of the Sunnah than the Sunnah has in need of the Quran. And by this statement they mean that the Quran does not begin to explain the Sunnah. Rather, indeed, inside the Sunnah you begin to find the explanation and the meanings of the Quran. So they're trying to highlight as if the Quran has more need towards the Sunnah because of its explanation towards the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Likewise, we find in this common day an error that we find that many or some Muslims are beginning to look down upon the Sunnah, begin to belittle it or begin to find it trivial at times. And some unfortunately have begun to make the Sunnah as some form of entertainment, to make a mockery and a joke about some of the symbols or the sha'a'ir, the symbols of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And as the Quran, as it mentions, وَمَنْ يُعَظِّمْ شَعَائِرَ اللَّهِ فَإِنَّهَا مِنْ تَقْوَى الْقُلُوبِ. Whoever represents and begins to give respect towards the symbols of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that is from the consciousness and devotion towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So some of us may fall short in certain practices of the sunnah or certain teachings, but at least we should hold inside our hearts and our belief and our words should be of one of glorifying the sunnah of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Thus ulama have collected amongst those elements which are known as nawaqidul Islam, those things that begin to nullify your faith. Amongst those elements which have been documented is al-istihza'u bis-sunnati, to mock the sunnah, naw'un min al-kufr, is a form of disbelief. It can take the individual, unfortunately, eventually outside the fold of Islam. Likewise, we find that some individuals amongst us, we begin to focus the sunnah as a concept of qushur, what's known as the external peel. That is not very important of how the person represents themselves. It's just a peel that can be taken off and thrown away. It's the core element that a person needs to focus upon. Likewise, we also find the opposite extreme among some individuals about the sunnah, that they begin to think that certain elements of the sunnah show that you are a person of the sunnah. They begin to make allegiance upon certain things of the sunnah, when you find where, unfortunately, al-amr wasi', the affair is very wide open, that fuqaha and ulama have tolerated certain elements of differences of opinion. But we find that some of us, we begin to champion a certain cause, or we begin to revolve around a certain sunnah. So for example, wad'u al-yadayn al-sadr, to place one's hands on one's chest, or tahriq al-isba' fi at-tashahhud, or to move one's finger inside tashahhud, or the way that we go down inside sujood. People begin to make allegiances that if a person does this action, this must be a person who's really following the sunnah or implementing the sunnah. And likewise, we find that some individuals, unfortunately, that the sunnah has become something which is full of a rational understanding. That if I can rationalistically understand the sunnah, if it's applicable in the modern world, or there's a wisdom, or there's an explanation, then I'm going to begin to implement that sunnah inside my life. Other individuals begin to take the sunnah that just leave the sunnah alone. There are greater goals. There's a greater objective. There's an element of unity of this Muslim ummah. There's an element of looking at disasters that take place upon this Muslim ummah. So whilst you individuals begin to talk about the sunnah, there's a greater element. So we can bypass the sunnah and we can get to the end. This is also something which is a great big fallacy. It's never ever going to ever be possible to come back to an element of unity, an element of being disciplined, of element of becoming victorious once again via bypassing the sunnah and the teachings of the Prophet Muhammad and thinking it is a greater objective to be gained. When you bypass this individual, you bypass his life, you bypass his teachings, you will never ever be given that success ever, no matter what you may think about the documentation, what you believe may be the form of success upon this world. Likewise, you find other individuals begin to take only the sunnah and take no measures. They begin to take the sunnah in a black and white context. You have to make that effort. Yes, there's many teachings of the sunnah which highlight what a person needs to do inside their life. So the person needs to take that sunnah and begin to take the measures, take the impact of that sunnah and make that effort. You need victory and the return of this Muslim ummah, or becoming dominant and powerful once again, won't just become by just reading about the sunnah. It means the actual physical implementation of sunnah, living by the sunnah, teaching the people the sunnah, and if the words are correct, enforcing the sunnah upon certain individuals if the person has the power and ability and the sultan and ability to do that. Other individuals that we find, the sunnah has become mere quotations, academics, rhetoric. You find person يحمل الدكتورة, person has a PhD or graduated from certain institute, or the person is well spoken, or the sunnah has become a form of entertainment, to be flamboyant with one words, to attract people. The sunnah of the Prophet Muhammad is not there to be used to attract people, to entertain people. It is something that has been placed there to bring people يخرجهم من الظلمات إلى النور, to take people out the realms of darknesses and bring them to the light of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That is how a person sees a person, the sunnah. And like unfortunately in our society has become, it's quite harsh to mention such words, that حتى من إخواننا, from amongst our own brethren and certain people called to the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They want to focus upon an element of entertainment and want to focus upon that. The person is to be delivering the message of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. وَمَنْ أَحْسَنُ قَوْلًا مِمَّنْ دَعَى إِلَى اللَّهِ وَعَمِلَ صَالِحًا وَقَالَ إِنَّنِي مِنَ الْمُسْلِمِينَ. Who is the best individual who calls to the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, encourages people to do that. كُلُّنَا قَاصِرِينَ. All of us are deficient in certain things that we do inside our life. But the believer is the one who's encouraging other individuals. If I cannot do the sunnah in my life, you should do that inside your life. You should carry out these actions inside your life. To make the sunnah become something trivial. When people are posed certain questions about the sunnah of the Prophet Muhammad, it's not that important. We're living in a modern world. Ignore these things. Don't worry about these things. Is that the way that the companions understood this element? Was that the way that he taught the people around him to respect his sunnah? And possibly one concept could be that we need to go back and begin to assess the beginning and the journey of this respected and blessed individual, and to begin to develop that love. So the sunnah no longer becomes something which is trivial, something which seems to be hard and difficult, becomes something which is ease. And love and devotion leads to that individual to follow the best individual, none other than the example of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And thus we find we begin to emulate this individual. We begin to take all of his teachings in all aspects, whether it be his character, his behavior, his internal thoughts of happiness and sadness, and the way he conducted himself that some of us are failing to understand. Even basic ahadith that we find, Man kana yu'minu billahi wal yawmil akhir, falyaqul khayran aw liyasmut. Whoever believes in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the last day, let that individual speak good or remain silent. None of you truly believes until he loves for his brother what he loves for himself. All these prophetic traditions and hadith that all of us have memorized inside our lives. وَأَمَّا عَمَلِيًّا وَتَطْبِيقًا. As for the actual implementation, the actual virtualization of this, to see this, unfortunately at times is very minimal inside our lives. But all of us have learned all of this rhetoric or this academia. But we want to begin to see إِنَّمَا الْعِلْمُ لِلْعَمَلِ. Indeed, knowledge is for action. A person gains the knowledge to implement it inside their life. That's many of the ulama of the sunnah have mentioned that even whereby an action is just a sunnah in the prophetic traditions, at least once in your life you should try to implement that inside your life. It happens to be only a sunnah, not something which is an obligation, because we know in general ulama fuqaha mention whereby the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam has commanded us to do something. Al-amr yufidul wujub. If he told us to do something, that becomes an obligation. That is something that we have to carry out inside our lives. But if you just recommended something, for example, to perform wudu before one goes to sleep, at least once in a while a person should do that, or to read some extra prayers, or to do a certain action. Why? To live the sunnah, to live the resemblance of following the life of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And thus we find that no sunnah will begin to be seen as something which is small or petty, or something which is difficult will become something easy. And thus if we go back and look at those ayat inside the Quran, in 3 separate locations Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about the coming of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. One of those ayat that we find towards the end of Surah Al-Imran, whereby Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions, لَقَدْ مَنَّ اللَّهُ عَلَى الْمُؤْمِنِينَ إِذْ بَعَثَ فِيهِمْ رَسُولًا مِنْ أَنفُسِهِمْ يَتْلُو عَلَيْهِمْ آيَاتِهِ وَيُزَكِّيهِمْ وَيُعَلِّمُهُمُ الْكِتَابَ وَالْحِكْمَةَ وَإِنْ كَانُوا مِنْ قَبْلُ لَفِي ضَلَالٍ مُبِينٍ. This is amongst the ultimate blessings upon this Muslim ummah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned, لَقَدْ مَنَّ اللَّهُ عَلَى الْمُؤْمِنِينَ. Indeed, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has conferred a great blessing upon the believers. He sent a messenger from amongst their own selves who will recite upon them the book, who will teach them the ayat. And he's going to be that individual, yuzakkihim. He's going to purify them. He's going to nurture them. He's going to train them. He's going to educate them. That is the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. In the end of Surah Tawbah that we find, whereby Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala again talks about the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. لَقَدْ جَاءَكُمْ رَسُولٌ مِّنْ أَنفُسِكُمْ عَزِيزٌ عَلَيْهِ مَا عَنِتُّمْ حَرِيصٌ عَلَيْكُمْ بِالْمُؤْمِنِينَ رَؤُوفٌ رَحِيمٌ. Indeed, there's come a messenger from amongst your own selves. It burdens him, it troubles him that you're not coming towards a path of guidance. حَرِيصٌ عَلَيْكُمْ بِالْمُؤْمِنِينَ رَؤُوفٌ رَحِيمٌ. He is full of mercy and compassion and pitifulness towards the believers. This is the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam coming to this Muslim ummah. And as you find in the hadith in Sahih al-Bukhari, that most people are going towards that hellfire. And I'm the person who's trying to protect the moths and the insects to enter into that fire. That is the parable of people entering into Jahannam. So the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam was sent to save people, rescue people from Jahannam, and take them to the light of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And thus we find this clear distinction of the messenger, whereby the previous messengers were sent to a set nation, to a set people. Isa alayhi salam, Jesus, wa rasulan ila bani Israel. The whole concept of East at the moment that we find, what their belief is, he was only sent to the lost sheep of Israel. He was only sent to that nation. Only one messenger came to the whole of humanity. If we begin to understand this, we begin to understand the role of the sunnah, the impact of the sunnah, to deliver that sunnah to these people. Many of the individuals to this day, after everything that's taken place upon this earth, whether it be atrocities or difficulties or acts of terrorism or whatever it may be, most people are still unaware of who the Prophet Muhammad is. And partially the blame falls upon us that we have not made or exerted the efforts to teach people what is the role of this individual. What is the role of this individual who came upon humanity? The Quran mentions inside the Quran that we find inside Surah Al-Anbiya, the 21st chapter of the Quran towards the end, وَمَا أَرْسَلْنَاكَ إِلَّا رَحْمَةً لِلْعَالَمِينَ. We did not send you except for as a mercy to the world, to everything, whether it be the world of the jinn or the world of the human being. He's been sent as a mercy to every living thing. In another passage of the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned, وَمَا أَرْسَلْنَاكَ إِلَّا كَافَةً لِلنَّاسِ بَشِيرًا وَنَذِيرًا وَلَكِنَّ أَكْثَرَ النَّاسِ لَا يَعْلَمُونَ. We did not send you except for the whole of humanity, to give them the glad tidings and to warn them as well. وَلَكِنَّ أَكْثَرَ النَّاسِ لَا يَعْلَمُونَ. But most people are heedless regarding this. Do not have the correct knowledge and understanding of the role of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. What else did Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mention about the final Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam? لَقَدْ كَانَ لَكُمْ فِي رَسُولِ اللَّهِ أُسْوَةٌ حَسَنَةٌ. For all of us individuals, all of us believers, you find the best, the prime example, the exemplary character and behavior and conduct lies in whom? Lies in none other than the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Likewise, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned, وَرَفَعْنَا لَكَ ذِكْرَكَ. Indeed, we raised high your remembrance, whether it be the verbal remembrance, or whether it be the physical remembrance of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Likewise, we find Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mention, وَإِنَّكَ لَعَلَى خُلُقٍ عَظِيمٍ. Indeed, your character is so sublime, so manifest, it's so high, so lofty, the character and the behavior of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Likewise, you find, قُلْ إِن كُنْتُمْ تُحِبُّونَ اللَّهَ فَاتَّبِعُونِي يُحْبِبْكُمُ اللَّهُ يَغْفِرْ لَكُمْ ذُنُوبَكُمْ وَاللَّهُ غَفُورٌ رَحِيمٌ. This is the ayah that many ulama tafsir have mentioned, like Imam al-Wahid in his kitab Asbab al-Nuzul, and likewise Imam al-Hasan al-Basri mentions. This is the ayah of al-ikhtibar or imtihan. If you ever want to test your love, you want to test your devotion, you want to test your faith, the ayah mentions قُلْ إِن كُنْتُمْ تُحِبُّونَ اللَّهِ. Say, if you love Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, is it just to say these words? What is the crux of the issue? The answer is given. The answer is there. فَاتَّبِعُونِي. Follow the Prophet Muhammad, follow me, follow him. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will in return, raddul fi'l, will love you, will wipe out your sins and forgive you and pardon you. So this is the way of the life of the believer. If you want to find out the element of iman and devotion towards the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, likewise you find in Kitab al-Iman of Sahih Muslim, Kitab al-Iman talking about halawatul iman. What is the sweetness of iman? That Allah and His Messenger become so beloved to that individual over everything else. This is what the believer is trying to search for. If the believer understands that he is the best creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala ever placed upon this earth, from the beginning to the end, no one will ever come and touch and be like the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. All the rest of the Anbiya, even when Isa alayhi salam he returns, or if Musa alayhi salam was to return, they will all follow none other than the sunnah and the teachings and the character and the leadership of none other than the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And thus we find the rank of the sunnah that we find. وَأَنزَلْنَا إِلَيْكَ الذِّكْرَى لِتُبَيِّنَ لِلنَّاسِ مَا نُزِّلَ إِلَيْهِمْ وَلَعَلَّهُمْ يَتَفَكَّرُونَ. Look how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about the rank of the sunnah. We sent down the dhikr upon you. A dhikr min asma' al-Quran, from the names of the Quran. And we have given you this dhikr, the Quran, لِتُبَيِّنَ لِلنَّاسِ مَا نُزِّلَ إِلَيْهِمْ وَلَعَلَّهُمْ يَتَفَكَّرُونَ. You are going to make the explanation of this dhikr. The best explanation of the Quran is done via the best blessed tongue of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Thus the Quran mentions, وَمَا يَنْطِقُ عَنِ الْهَوَىٰ إِنْ هُوَ إِلَّا وَحْيٌ يُوحَىٰ. Everything the Messenger alayhi salatu salam utters is nothing but divine revelation. No whims and desires or personal thoughts or personal conduct comes into the way what he tells the people to carry out inside their lives. Likewise, we find inside Surah Al-Hashr, the 59th chapter of the Quran, verse number 7 that we find, وَمَا آتَاكُمُ الرَّسُولُ فَخُذُوهُ وَمَا نَهَاكُمْ عَنْهُ فَانْتَهُوا. Whatever the messenger, we're simple Muslims we are. Whatever the messenger tells you to take it, take it. Whatever he tells you to stay away from it. Go and read the tafsir of these ayat inside Surah Al-Hashr, the 59th chapter of the Quran, verse number 7. How على رأسهم إمام المفسرين Ibn Kathir begins to highlight the tafsir of this ayah, begin to give the explanation, and especially to many of our respected sisters. A woman by the name of Ya'qub that she came, whereby Abdullah bin Mas'ud said that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has cursed those women who begin to pluck their eyebrows, who place spaces inside their teeth to beautify themselves. Look at Islam today, billahi alaykum. Look at the resemblance of Islam to please certain individuals. I need to dress like this. My hijab needs to be like this. It needs to be flamboyant colors. It needs to be presented like this. Your qudwa, your example is none other than the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Don't look at the Western world to teach you how to dress and how to conduct yourself. Look at Ummahatul Mu'mineen. Look at the mothers of the believers. Just like the men of this Muslim Ummah, they look at the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Our respected women folk, they should begin to look at his wives. Look at the mothers. Look at how they dress, how they conduct themselves. Don't let the world around you begin to teach you that this is Islamic practice, or because a certain individual begins to do this, or person begins to enforce this. You find here, Abdullah bin Mas'ud mentioned, the Prophet ﷺ said, Allah has cursed those women. These are difficult words to bear. They are very difficult words for some of us to begin to think it's trivial issue that sisters will pluck their eyebrows or to dress in this manner. Look at many of the prophetic traditions of how he displayed that certain things will become apparent inside this Muslim ummah. We pay no attention towards this. This woman, she took offense to this, like many of our respected sisters today, that maybe this is a harsh individual, a harsh character. There's nothing harsh about the teachings of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He said, indeed, it's inside the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. She said, it doesn't exist in the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. وَحَقًّا, there is no ayah inside the Quran that highlights this. There's no ayah in the Quran that says that women are cursed to carry out these actions. What is the answer then? He said, لو قرأت قول الله سبحانه وتعالى. If you read this ayah, you would have found it. Meaning, if the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, he commanded it, it is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. وَمَا آتَاكُمُ الرَّسُولُ فَخُذُوهُ وَمَا نَهَاكُمْ عَنْهُ فَانْتَهُوا. So that's what a Muslim is. If the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam commanded us to do certain things, we take it. If he told us to stay away from certain things, we stay away from it. So those people are known as Quraniyun, who people just take the Quran. How do you understand the Quran? Even today, people just like to read the Quran. Just like to read the Quran. There has to be a prophetic understanding of the approach, the methodology of approaching the Quran, to see how the Prophet ﷺ described the Quran. He highlighted how to explain the Quran. He highlighted in min bab as-salah, Sallu kama ra'aytumuni usalli. Pray as you have seen me praying. Hadith inside Bukhari That's how simple the affair is. We don't need to go to the right or go to the left. The Quran says, وَأَقِيمُوا الصَّلَاةَ, some 82, 83 times inside the Quran. Establish the prayer. How do you now establish the prayer? He highlighted inside the hadith in Bukhari, whereby he stood on the minbar and he made the prayer and everybody visualized him. And he said to the companions around him, Sallu kama ra'aytumuni usalli. Pray as you've seen me praying. He said to his companions, Khudu anni manasikakum. Take from me the rites of Hajj, take it from me. So all these elements begin to teach us the role and the implementation of the Sunnah. If we begin to understand this, the Sunnah becomes something simple and easy and beloved to the individual. That these actions, they are actions of the beloved Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Likewise, in the Western influence at the moment, we are all searching if the words are correct. An icon or an idol or some influence or some character that we want to look at. If these words do exist or can be acceptable inside Islam, the icon and the idol, or the character, or the super being, using these words linguistically, who is that supposed to be? Who should that be? If these individuals have their icon, they have their symbol, they have somebody they follow. If you follow their lives or what they begin to follow inside their lives, they want to dress like that person, they want to eat like that person, they want to sleep like that person, they want to laugh like that person, they want to weep like that person, they want to live their life like that person. And look at us, Qasirin, many of us born Muslims, we find great contention to be like this individual. And then we want to tell these people, we love the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. They follow the people that they love, and that's all respect to them. That's what they believe in. But when it comes to us Muslims, look how we're Qasirin, how deficient we are, how we begin to dismantle everything about his life. If you look at his personality, if you want to find the ultimate individual in strength and power, in those ahadith which are da'if, talking about 100 man's strength, but that which is authentic inside the Shama'il of Imam Tirmidhi, the strength of 30 men have been given to this individual. In terms of bravery, he would ride a horse without a saddle. Many of the companions would come behind his back, shield themselves behind him, because he was the most strongest in faith in going forth. When companions felt scared, they felt worried, they went behind the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Likewise, we find in terms of love and affection, look how he conducted himself. How Aisha mentions his blessed wife, says that I would rest my cheek on his shoulder, just to watch, visualize these individuals, that other women could hear that I rested myself on the blessed cheek of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Likewise, you speak to the way that he spoke to her. It's a lesson to this Muslim ummah. Kallimini, kallimini, speak to me, speak to me. He knew when they were upset or when they were angry with me. And likewise, we find his character and his behavior that we find was so exemplary, it's unimaginable. The beauty that was given to the Prophet Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam. One companion narrates, I looked at the moon and I looked at the blessed face of the Prophet Muhammad and I wanted to ascertain what is more beautiful in character, what is more outshining, what is more blessed. I looked at the moon, I looked at his face. I had to conclude that the face of the Prophet Muhammad outshines the moon. Imagine this, the sweat of the Prophet ﷺ was nothing but the smell of musk. Can you imagine this? The odor that we have, the bad odor that we have is a bad stench. But that lovely stench that came from the Prophet ﷺ was none other than musk. And as if one female companion would collect that and keep that inside a bottle. Imagine this. This is the individual that's been given to us. And we want to be those individuals who want to turn away from him, who want to move away from him. And as you find, فَمَنْ رَغِبَ عَنْ سُنَّتِي فَلَيْسَ مِنِّي. Whoever turns away from my sunnah has got nothing to do with me. كُلُّ أُمَّتِي يَدْخُلُونَ الْجَنَّةِ. All of my ummah will enter to paradise, except for whoever refuses. Is there any individual today who wants to refuse to enter into paradise? Is there any individual? Yes, there will be individuals. Whoever obeys the messenger, دخل الجنة. Whoever وَمَنْ عَصَانِي فَقَدْ أَبَى. Whoever disobeys me, فَقَدْ أَبَى, has rejected himself, has refused himself to enter into that blessed paradise of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So we find حقوق النبي, the rights of the Prophet Muhammad alayhi salam, are so many, numerous to mention. Some more than 100 حقوق some ulama have collected. Some have dissected that and brought it down to some 35 or 36 rights. And some have brought it down to some 7 basic rights we want to touch upon. All that we find al-imanu bihi, as we began with that iman, that conviction, that he is the most selected and the best prophet of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He is Khatamun Nabiyyin. He is a seal of prophethood, that he completes the jigsaw, he completes the puzzle of all of the previous Anbiya. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala selected it and chose him, as Abdullah bin Mas'ud mentions, one riwayah, one wording going back to him, that everything about Islam, or everything about the finality of Islam has been selected and chosen by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So to have that iman, when a person has that iman,
that will begin to create that feeling within the heart and the mind of the individual. That if I have that true iman, that faith towards this individual, that will urge and inspire me to become closer and closer towards the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. فَآمِنُوا بِاللَّهِ وَرَسُولِهِ وَالنُّورِ الَّذِي أَنزَلْنَا وَاللَّهُ بِمَا تَعْمَلُونَ خَبِيرٌ. Believe in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and believe in His messenger, and believe in that light that's been sent down upon the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Likewise, وَمَنْ لَمْ يُؤْمِنْ بِاللَّهِ وَرَسُولِهِ فَإِنَّمَا أَعْتَدْنَا لِلْكَافِرِينَ سَعِيرًا. Whoever doesn't believe in Allah and believe in the messenger, indeed we prepared for the disbelieving individuals a great big blazing fire. And thus we find that there's some individuals who may be in some religious position. They know the Prophet alayhi salatu salam, because the Quran itself, it mentions that these individuals, الَّذِينَ آتَيْنَهُمُ الْكِتَابَ يَعْرِفُونَهُ كَمَا يَعْرِفُونَ أَبْنَاءَهُم. Those people who given the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Ahlul Kitab, يَعْرِفُونَهُ كَمَا يَعْرِفُونَ أَبْنَاءَهُم. They know him like they know their own sons. And thus you find they began to hide, conceal the ayat. And even today, they don't want people to come towards the path of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. They don't want individuals to learn about his life. They want to create this image. They want to tarnish his image, that people do not come towards him. But unfortunately, you find وَمَكَّرُوا وَمَكَّرَ اللَّهُ وَاللَّهُ خَيْرُ الْمَاكِرِينَ. They plot and they plan. But in what they try to conceal and they hide, look how many individuals still get impressed, want to come towards the life of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So that leads on to the second element, ta'atuhu, his obedience. When you have that iman towards the Prophet Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam, you begin to find obedience towards him. Some 36, 37 odd ayat inside the Quran which talk about obeying Allah and obeying His messenger. To such a degree, in one place inside the Quran, inside Surah An-Nisa, we find مَنْ يُطِعِ الرَّسُولَ فَقَدْ أَطَاعَ اللَّهِ. Whoever obeys the messenger has obeyed Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Throughout the Quran, it talks about obeying Allah and obeying the messenger. Firstly, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then the messenger. This one occasion it mentions, if you obey the messenger, you've obeyed Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Here, ulama of tafsir mentioned, this shows the rank, the prestige, the honor, and the dignity. فَهُوَ فِي مَقَامِ التَّشْرِيعِ. He's in a position of legislating via the permission of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Likewise, we find that if a person goes into path of disobedience, then likewise we find the end result will be something which is a punishable action upon that individual. This obedience leads to ittiba' Rasul, as we mentioned, leads to the person to begin to follow the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Read through the companions, how simple individuals they were, how they conquered a large portion of this earth. Was it via the technological advances? Was it their great mind skill? Was it the academia? Was it their rhetoric? Was it the PhD dissertations? They were barefooted, destitute, downtrodden Bedouin Arabs walking upon the desert. And what happened to these individuals? They believed in him. They followed him. They emulated him. If you read some of the life of these individuals, you find some of them would crouch down and begin to try to urinate like the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. When a Jewish man came to Salman al-Farisi and tried to rebuke him, like many of us today, we become to conceal ourselves. We begin to cocoon ourselves. When a person makes a mockery about the Sunnah or makes an instigation about the Sunnah, we cave in. Salman al-Farisi, he was bold enough to turn around and said, there's no problem if I have to squat down. If I have to squat down and urinate and defecate, because this is the action of the Prophet Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam. Is this the way that we approach the Sunnah? Or is it quite the contrary, that when we become caved in this type of environment, we begin to shy away, we begin to hide away, we begin to cave in? Where's our obedience? Where's our ta'ah? Where's our loyalty then towards the Prophet Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam? And as you can read in Kitab Fada'il al-Sahaba in Sahih al-Bukhari, where we find numerous ahadith talking about the companions, how they began to emulate him, dress like him, walk like him, began to ride like him, move their camels like him, began to follow his footsteps. For what intent? Because why? They were severely in love with the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, want to follow him in everything that he done in his life. And that is the element of love. Hubbuhu sallallahu alaihi wasallam, to love the Prophet Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam. We find inside Surah At-Tawbah, say if your children, your wealth, your property, your parents, your children, all of these are more beloved to you than Allah and His Messenger, فَتَرَبَّصُوا حَتَّى يَأْتِيَ اللَّهُ بِأَمْرِ. Then wait till the commandment of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala comes. So love towards the Prophet Muhammad is paramount, goes beyond all of these elements to such a degree. Inside Surah Al-Ahzab, the 33rd chapter of the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala began by mentioning النَّبِيُّ أَوْلَى بِالْمُؤْمِنِينَ مِنْ أَنفُسِهِمْ. The Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam is closer to the believers than their own selves. He has to be closer than your own self. You have to bring the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam before everything. Before your family, before your children, before your wealth, before the world, before everything. If you have that element inside your heart, bashir nafsak, give yourself glad tidings that you're following upon the path, the methodology of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And thus you find that a person is that individual that you find لا يؤمن أحدكم حتى أكون أحب إليه من والده وولده والناس أجمعين. None of you truly believes until I become more beloved to the individual than one's father, one's children, and the whole of mankind. You have to love him more than every single thing. Even your own nafs, your own soul, you have to love the Prophet Muhammad alayhi salatu salam. Likewise, we find then the fifth element, ihtiramuhu, respect towards the Prophet Muhammad alayhi salatu salam. Yes, there's going to be elements of the sunnah which we are tolerant towards. The al-amr wasi', as we began with. But all that we are asking and requesting certain Muslims to do is to respect the fact about his sunnah. If you don't want to implement a sunnah inside your life, most of the tarnishing that we find, unfortunately, is coming from our own Muslims who say these are medieval Muslims, these are barbaric Muslims, these are orthodox Muslims who want to follow the text in this manner. We are not orthodox Muslims in that sense, or tyrannical or medieval individuals. Many of these texts have been quoted by classical ulama that exist inside works of tafsir. So if you don't have the iman, you don't have the belief, or you have your own ta'wil, the least that you can say is these are texts that exist according to classical sources, that these Muslims have decided to carry out these practices out of their love and their devotion and their commitment towards the Prophet Muhammad. Don't come and add more problems to the Muslim society via coming and making these comments that these individuals have got their own interpretation. Our interpretation is a classical interpretation that was made by numerous companions inside their life, or even before that made by the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And thus we find that to mock the sunnah, as we mentioned, that some people want to mock the beard, or mock the thobe, or mock the hijab, or mock the niqab. This mockery that you find is kufr, is disbelief. Wallahi, if you don't want to practice it inside your life, we have no contention with you. There's no contention. But when you want to come out in the public domain and you want to mock the sunnah, you want to belittle the sunnah, even whether it be these so-called Muslim individuals, whether it be Salman Rushdie's satanic verses or Najib Mahfouz that we find, or this Muslim female comedian, or this other woman comedian who want to come and make jokes about Islam, whatever it may be, what are these people actually doing? They're all questioning the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Then we find that maybe the reasons for this, that non-Muslims also begin to depict him in this manner, could be four basic reasons. Either an element of jealousy that we find, or an element of hatred, or an element of a threat, or just pure ignorance. These are the four reasons that we find that these attacks begin to take place upon the Prophet ﷺ. That they are probably possibly jealous about his message, or there's an element of hatred, or you find there's a threat, or there's ignorance. Sixthly, that we find hukmu, his judgment. That the things that he told us to do inside our lives, his judgment is a form of law. فَلَا وَرَبِّكَ لَا يُؤْمِنُونَ حَتَّى يُحَكِّمُوكَ فِي مَا شَجَرَ بَيْنَهُمْ ثُمَّ لَا يَجِدُوا فِي أَنفُسِهِمْ حَرَجًا مِمَّا قَضَيْتَ وَيُسَلِّمُوا تَسْلِيمًا. That you take his judgment. When he gives a judgment, he gives a ruling. Look what the ayah mentions. There's no rancor, no ill feeling inside your heart. You totally accept the teachings of the Prophet Muhammad alayhi salatu salam. Even though you may not do it then, you have that inside your heart, that's a form of success. And finally, in conclusion that we find, the seventh right that needs to be mentioned is as-salah was-salam. Because you find there's some individuals who want to try to come and promote that we are people who are derogatory towards the Prophet Muhammad alayhi salatu salam. We don't elevate him enough. We don't give him enough respect. We don't give him that due right. We don't give him that due love. This is all a great big fallacy and nothing but a great big myth and a lie. That's not true. From the huquq al-nabi, from the rights and the regulations, وَمِنْ aqidatina, from according to our belief and our creed, is to send the salutations, the peace and the greetings, to give him that due reverence, to remember him. Whoever doesn't send the salutations upon him, فَهُوَ بَخِيل, he's a wretched individual. Wherever you happen to be, send your salutations upon me. After the adhan, بَيْنَ الْأَذَانِ وَالْإِقَامَةِ, whilst making dua in the beginning towards the end, whenever you remember him, inside your tashahud. This is all part of our creed. So when people want to come and tarnish us, that you individuals, you don't really love him. So what have we been doing throughout our life? Reading his ahadith, reading his sunnah, teaching people the sunnah, telling people to avoid bid'ah. Are we teaching people to go into a form of excessive love, to avoid his sunnah, to avoid his teachings? Everything is based upon love and will enter into paradise. Who are the individuals who are exerting the efforts to teach people to come back to the pristine teachings, the orthodox teachings of the Prophet Muhammad alayhi salatu salam? So may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us all the tawfiq and ability to follow his life to the best of our ability, and to resurrect us on that day. We return back to the fountain and he will be standing there, and we will begin to drink from his hands, or drink from those goblets and those cups while he's standing there, and he'll be calling out that this is my nation. We want to be part of that nation upon this dunya, and even more so inside the akhirah. وَقُولُوا قَوْلِ هَذَا وَاسْتَغْفِرُ اللَّهِ لِي وَلَكُمْ وَلِجَمِيعِ الْمُسْلِمِينَ فَاسْتَغْفِرُوا إِنَّهُ هُوَ الْغَفُورُ الرَّحِيمُ.